What's up, y'all? It's Dr. Paul with Liberty Hill Comics. Welcome to the live show. I'm here with my fellow conservators. I'm coming to you, as always, from an undisclosed location in the Texas Hill Country, and this is episode 57. Shout out to my daughter and her friend Sid, who created our theme song.
Yeah.
Isn't that awesome?
Very cool.
How are you guys doing?
Hey, everybody.
Doing good. I just got home today from my trip, so
Wow.
I'm good.
That's got to feel good.
Just getting home, sleeping in your own bed instead of living in hotels. You know, I was in Nagoya to Anchorage to Mexico City to Los Angeles to Sacramento, all in one roll.
Wow.
So
Wow.
I'll be sleeping after this.
I guess. Why don't you say hi to everybody? Tell them where they can find you, Captain Larry.
You can find me at flyinglcomix.com, or you can find me most of the time on Facebook and Instagram.
How about you, Phil? How have you been?
Hey, everybody. Good as always. Drowning in comics, as I like to always say.
Nice.
And as always, coming to you live from the border of Brooklyn and Queens here in New York City. And you can find me on Instagram at Phantom Restoration or at phantomrestoration.com.
I hope y'all both had a great week. I had a nice week. It was productive.
I had a busy week, yeah, but I'm looking forward tomorrow. I get to go pick up all my mail, and I've got lots of stuff. I've got a CGC box and a Heritage box.
Ooh, nice.
Plus a bunch of other eBay stuff.
Nice.
So,
maybe we have an upcoming segment that's like a pickups, but for conservation.
I think that might be possible.
Sweet. Well, before we get too much further, if you're watching this now live without commercial interruption, it is thanks to Collecting Chaos and Salesboy Comics, who reminds you to keep it moist. And before we go much further, thank you so much to AG and Don Carter for sponsoring next episode. Very much appreciated, fellas. That is awesome. We have a fun show for you today. We've got a short What Are Conserved Comic Books Worth segment. And then
I like that.
Captain Larry's going to walk us through one of his conservation projects, which is
finally. I feel guilty. I haven't been able to give you guys any content for like ever.
Hey, man. It is our thrill to just have you in our presence. So don't feel guilty. But it is nice when you bring some content because it's always fun.
Well, yeah, I started posting again on YouTube, and I looked at my previous. I haven't posted anything since January. I'm really slacking. Yeah. So I got a bunch of stuff that I've been shooting raw videos, so I'm compiling everything together so you guys will see a bunch of new videos on my channel.
Very nice. Looking forward to that. I have a lot of people actually to catch up on. I know Jason's got a lot going on his channel, and I know the professor does as well.
Professor's really doing a lot of stuff.
I was just talking to Shelby about bird migration kind of wrapping up here in Texas, and the season's changing, and time to get to work on earnest on the next book, and how we ought to be putting out some content on our channels to show people, sort of showcase chapters of this book on our YouTube. So hopefully a little bit of shift in activity over the next couple months. I'm looking forward to it. Why don't we say hi to the rest of the folks before we jump
I think that's a great idea.
Obviously, thanks again to AG and Don Carter. We got Robbie Josephs, my buddy Hugo Danner. What's up, Mike? Blue Garland, and the aforementioned Jason Adrift, the archivist.
The professor is here with us.
The aforementioned professor, Peter Alachi.
Bronzeville
Jim is here from Bronzeville. Silver Spidey's here. And, Doy B. Dickles. Oh, my goodness. I want to get all of the Green Lantern appearances before Doiby Dickles shows up. And then I could be just done with Golden Age Green Lantern. It's only like 8 issues.
Is that like the pre-Robin Green Lantern group?
Exactly. Yeah. It's like pre-Robin Tech. It's pre-Doiby All-American. Because Doiby's already around when Green Lantern #1 drops. So you really only have, I don't know how many issues it is, from 16 to like, don't quote me, 26, 28, something like that. Doiby shows up. 10 or 12 issues. I mean, a few of them are a little expensive. But then again, the pre-Robin Techs, a few of those are a little expensive too. Doiby with Goytrude. Well, Goytrude is the only part of Doiby that I enjoyed. So it's either a 2x4 or a monkey wrench. Pipe wrench, yeah. All right, let's jump into it. What do you guys think of this book?
Yeah,
it is a cool cover.
I'm excited because I saw it, but I only remember seeing a picture of it. So I know nothing about what it sold for or anything about the specifics of what conservation was done, whether it was just covered, cleaned, or structural work. But I do remember seeing it and being like, that could be a cool, and you were light years ahead of me already. So awesome pick. I love this book. It's such a great
cover. I love that cover. Yeah.
1951. Some will say you're wrapping up the Golden Age right here. Obviously, Batman continues in this gray area between the end of the Golden Age and the beginning of the Silver Age. Interestingly, and I confess I do not know a lot about this, two Faces, and they're both in this book. So we'll get into that.
Two Faces.
Two Faces.
Oh.
So Batman number 68, as I mentioned, published. At this point, Batman's bi-monthly. I guess the named books like Superman, Batman, Green Lantern, they were always bi-monthly or quarterly. So, but until they weren't. So this is Golden Age. So December 51, January 52 is the cover date here. And Harvey Dent is the original Two-Face, and then you have Paul Sloan, who's Two-Face the second. They both appear in this book. Median grade 5.0. I want to say there are 17 copies at 5.0. That's your median grade on this book. Not a rare book. 214 total universal, 13 restored, 2 qualified. Just the one conserved. So we got lucky. It sold. And you can imagine with over 200 copies in the census of a popular character, these change hands fairly regularly for a Golden Age book anyway. So we have some nice price points. Interestingly, it's not entirely clear exactly what the fair market value of a Universal 5.0 is. So I'm going to give you guys a range at the end, but we'll talk about that next slide here, I think. Here we go. So last sale for a 5.0 Universal was actually $1,021. However, the Go Collect algorithm says fair market value is $700. Why is that? Because we've actually had 2 recent sales of 5.5s for under $900. So it kind of doesn't make sense that this book's worth over $1,000, but the 5.5 is worth $880.
Yeah.
So they sort of smooth that curve out, and they say, okay, well, this one's worth $700, and the 5.5's worth, $900. That said, again, this last sale at $1,021 was recent. The other thing is, I was thinking, well, maybe there's a page quality difference. Maybe the 5.5 that only sold for $880 was cream or tan, but it wasn't. It was actually a white pager. So I do think there's a legitimate sort of argument that this is somewhere in the range of $700 to $1,000 on this book. So here's our book, and it really presents well. I'm just kind of taking it in at arm's length. I think this is nothing. I mean, I think anybody would be thrilled to have this book. It really doesn't have any apparent flaws here. In fact, just glancing at it, I would say shocking that it grades under like a 6.5, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, because I'm not seeing any really major flaws. I mean,
So we'll jump into it.
yeah.
I see it on the back cover now, but
Staples
it's
replaced.
so
Okay.
subtle.
Grader's notes, off-white to white pages, obviously conserved book. Conservation includes staples replaced, so plural. I'm presuming that's both. Again, some comments about Two Feasts, the second appearing, as well as Harvey Dent. They've done this, I guess Overstreet started this. Atomic mushroom cloud panels started being like noted in Overstreet, and CGC has carried that on. I don't know anybody that specifically collects atomic mushroom cloud panels, but it's on the CGC notes here. At any rate, here we get it. Here are the flaws: light crease, left bottom of back cover, chip out top staple, reader's crease front cover. I mean, I don't even know if that breaks color. If it does, it's really minor. Multiple stain cover. So, as I usually do, provide you with a bit of a bigger view here. I mean, I guess I don't see the reader's crease. You can see a little bit more wear here, right?
The reader's crease is subtle, but I see it. Just because it barely breaks color.
Is it at the spine? Is that what you're thinking? Like
Yeah,
a quarter inch
that's
from the
what they're
spine?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I can
The
see
vertical
that.
line. Yeah.
Yeah.
But G5? That's harsh.
Was there remarks about the top of the back cover?
We'll see. It says stains, so I see here's a dust shadow. Right?
Yeah, I see that. There is a stain underneath on the tab there.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
On the spine side. And I guess that's probably a little water stain at the top left as well,
And a crease.
because it's interrupting the dust shadow, right?
Yeah.
There's a bit of a spine roll that they don't mention, but I guess you could deduct a bit for that. And then there's this stain over by Green Pants' right leg.
I mean, if you resub this, I could see it coming back to 6.
Right?
I don't. Just
This
sometimes
book's
that
too
happens.
nice for a 5, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Well, they must have dorked up. It says staples replaced.
Yeah, but that accounts for the conservation. That shouldn't be knocking off in the grade.
It does, because what it looks like to me is they were removed and reinserted. Calling it replaced. If you're replacing with period staples, it should stay conserved. But we don't. I don't know. I can see where they reinserted the staples and they may have closed them a little harshly, and it basically pulled the staple into the book.
Yeah, but there wasn't in the grader's notes. It didn't say recessed staples or.
Yeah, that you're right. It just says staples replaced. When was this graded?
Probably in the last year or two, probably.
Sorry.
20.
I'm getting here we
There
go.
it is. Okay, 2025.
25.
So March.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's fresh.
So it is absolutely fresh, huh?
Current standards. We demand questions. Answers.
All right. Whoops.
I saw it. You showed everybody. Too
All right.
late.
Don't bother guessing.
Yeah.
That's what happens.
That's
So
actually
this sold for
yeah.
$550.
Yeah. About 50%. Yeah.
Well,
we thought it was. Well, if you go with the $700
80% if you go with the 700.
Yeah. I still think in terms of 1,000. So.
54%. So somewhere between 54 and 80%.
I think that there's quite a bit of compression in these in these books because the grade varies so much and people like certain defects. But I do think that it's closer to the 7. So I do think that being about 80% of that's still a pretty strong price. But also, I mean, we know why if it's just the staple, that
right,
such a minimal amount.
Right, and not even cover clean, despite the fact that it has these stains on it. Right.
Yeah.
Okay, Robbie Joseph asks, is a conserved book generally worth more than a restored book?
Generally so, yes. We've been a lot of variability, but we've been kind of tracking conserved books being worth somewhere between half and 2/3 what a universal grade would be. And we're generally tracking restored books. I think more variability in restored books, but somewhere between 1/4 and 1/2 of universal. So I do think there's a clear differentiation there.
If I'm buying,
although there's overlap, right?
If I'm buying a restored book, a purple label, I generally look at 25% of the universal price and just wiggle up there, and then at a certain point I walk away if it's something I'm going to crack out and try to remove the restoration from.
I think one of the issues with restoration is it's a big catch-all bin, even bigger than conserved. Conserved is big enough catch-all bin, but like a trimmed book, I'm not even going to pay 1/4 of universal for a trimmed book personally.
I won't even look at one.
But some mild color touch, glue, stuff like that, I'm much more forgiving on, and because I feel like I can conserve those things.
Yeah.
So, so there it is. Sorry we didn't get to guess. It's my bad, y'all. Let's see. Casting for trim pages. So this is actually an interesting conversation we were having just recently. I spoke to Matt about it earlier this year, and he said that they at CGC had made a decision, because it is somewhat arbitrary. They had made a decision that if an entire book was trimmed and you came along and leaf cast every one of the interior pages and the cover, that they would not then move you into conserved. They just thought that was a bridge too far. So if the entire book is trimmed and you leaf cast it, then it's basically to no avail, because it's still going to be in a restored label. That said, he said, if the cover and the first wrap were trimmed, which occasionally you see just the cover trimmed, he said, we decided if you leaf cast that cover, we would give you conserved designation on that book, so it would not fall into restored. So my take on it, AG, is that I'm not going to put all that energy into...
It's a lot of work.
Leaf casting every single wrap to still be in a restored label. I'm just going to say, I guess you enjoy that book the way it is. It won't be for me, but there'll be some collector for it, right?
It would have to be a severe case of like the sentimental value of the book being greater than what you imagine the value would be. But then also you start to assess the cost, and then you're like, well, it's going to cost this much per wrap. It's a Golden Age book, 16 wraps plus a cover. And then that math, you're like, I mean, if money's no object, then fine, but you're going to be spending thousands and thousands of dollars to do this. It's going to be an expensive job. So.
Yeah, let me, to that sort of, in that vein, let me just say, that said, I would not personally, again, I'm not a gatekeeper. I would not personally disparage anybody who said, hey, I got this book, it's been trimmed, and I want to leaf cast every wrap. Dude, awesome. What can I do? Go
for it.
Right? Yeah. So that's where I'm at on it. I don't know if you guys want to add anything else. I think since we had just talked about it, it's probably a pretty good summary.
Well, it's just like you take a book that's been trimmed, and you leaf cast just that cover wrap, and then put it back together. That cover wrap's obviously going to overhang the interior pages. Would that be considered conservation? According to what you just said, what Matt said, yeah, that would be a conserved. So I would be down with that as well. But yeah. It also depends on, was it like if you have a book that had the rat chewed up corner, like off of everything, and you leaf casted that corner on every single wrap, that would be
I
conserved.
think
That's conserved, yeah, because that's a defect rather than somebody trying to intervene on the book, right?
I think
in the same way, if you spill ink on it, that's a defect. Whereas if someone tries to color something in, it's color touch. That's restoration, right?
I think that no, you're good. I think that it's the wrong question to ask, and what I mean by that is, I think that there actually are more appropriate times where you could cast an interior, and it could be cost effective if you have a book that's of a certain value or higher. And let's say you have slightly brittle pages, and then you need to cast every page to help reinforce it. So you're still going to get a conserved label because you're not there. Like once you remove the trimming element, then it just becomes a process and cost kind of question. And can it be done? And then it actually kind of might make more sense. So, but that's to say for fully trimmed books, it is still what it is.
Yeah, there's a lot of latitude in these rules because they're, especially in the conserved and restored world, there's room for interpretation here, right? Rick, great point. But even then, I think I would leave an action 1 just trimmed. I mean, it is what it is at that point. But a couple more comments. I think what you're saying here, Jason, is technically not true. Technically, you can bump a trim book to conserved. I don't think it's true.
I think you said that just before we started talking about it.
I think this, though, is the way to do it.
Yeah.
If I had a book that was trimmed all the way through, I could find me a interior that hadn't been trimmed. I can leaf cast the cover, marry them. That's a conserved book. And then I can sell my trimmed interior probably for not much less than what I bought a full interior for, frankly, because at that point you're just dealing in, parts of books and there's a lot of compression there.
Yeah, it's just paper at that point.
Yeah. Welcome, Comic Mike, to the show. Would a conserved grade be worth about 25% of the value or more? So we just talked about this in our first segment. Yep. We're looking at conserved books somewhere around 2/3 the value of Universal. Occasionally, the range is about 1/2 to 3/4, and we sometimes see it a little higher. We sometimes see it a little lower.
It also has to do with population too. If there's a high count of the book and there's conservation, it's going to go at a lower number. But if it's a somewhat rare book, conserved.
Yeah.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I was saying those numbers are kind of more or less true for Golden Age. They're less true for Silver Age generally, just because the populations of the Silver Age books are so much higher. There's a lot of collectors that are just like, I don't really have to buy this conserved books because there's lots of other copies out there.
Yeah, if you wanted to buy a conserved Hulk 181, it's not going to have any value compared to a Universal.
I think that there could be a delineation and like just a separation in conserved too, though. And I think that no one would argue that conserved books that are all original always go for more than a conserved book that has married parts. That's like the only exception, but that really kind of is a rule. And if you were to look at the breakdown, it is because astute buyers knock the price that they're willing to pay more because they're like, it's all original, but it's not from the same book, so it kind of hammers it a little bit, and that is a rule. Yeah,
that leaves little discounts for us, those of us that don't care about stuff like that.
If you don't mind, exactly. This kind of book,
like my first appearance of Starman.
Yep, exactly.
Originally in a green label.
Yep.
Soon to be in a conserved label.
Yep.
All right. Well. I think we've kind of exhausted that conversation. Let's jump into your segment, Larry.
Okay.
This is exciting.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I wanted a Wings #1, which I got, and I got this at Heritage. the spine was, split 1/3 up and down, and it was held together with tape. So I wanted to get the tape off of there, number one. But once I got inside of the book, I realized the very first wrap on the back, but basically page 32, as we call it, was missing, a 2x2 section of it. So we'll show that here in a second. But yeah, it was.
Well,
it
how
was,
do we feel about Heritage's 2.0 on this book then?
Well, I'm not sure how to feel because the book was together. It was held to tape. The staple was there. I think it was probably a 2. I personally would call this a 2.5 to a 3. Honestly.
Well, I guess it depends on what's missing. I guess it depends on what's missing. I mean, if the panel is part of the story,
if that didn't have anything missing, I would say that. But yeah, with that missing section, that's why it got downgraded.
Was it art or just margin?
It's art.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, it was right into one of the panels.
I could see the two. I could understand
with dialogue.
Gotcha. Okay.
Story affected. All right.
Ooh. All right.
Let's have a closer look.
All right. Well, this is basically talking about the Wings comics.
Yeah.
Fiction House, is basically the war comics. It was basically, we hadn't entered the war yet at that point, the United States. And so the Wings comics, it was basically they're moving into the Jungle comics, Planet comics. There's a lot big growth and interest in aviation, fighter pilots, woo,
Mm-hmm.
And so one thing I want to point out too is if you notice on the book, the cover, that's not an American fighter, that's a British fighter. It's got the rondelles on it. Yeah. So like I said, we had not entered the war yet. We're getting ready to. We're thinking about it.
What is this aircraft, Larry?
I think it's a rendition of a P-40 Warhawk, but it's not exactly. I think it's artist created.
Oh, okay.
But that would be it.
The closest.
That would be the closest thing I would say to come up with.
Wow. For the Royal Air Force.
For the Royal Air Force.
Cool.
Yeah, but 124 issues. So this is number one. The hammer price is $260. Buyer premium is $312. Then you have all your taxes and things on top of that. So yeah, it was. I thought it was a good deal because it was a number one. It was the very first one, and it was kind of one of those personal things for me.
Of course, yeah.
I can see the bias. I get it.
This is super
there's
early.
a little bit of bias for me. It's got the swastika on the cover, little things like that you look for. Any Nazi symbols or Japanese flags or things like that. Something you want to see.
Yeah.
So,
love it.
Period.
I think you did well.
So this is the spine. Before I started working on it, you can see the tape on the top and bottom holding it together. You can see that split in that upper photo. The split runs beyond the tape, so it actually came down. And when I started working on it, it actually became 100% split. It came apart as I was working on it. So. That's on me. So I had to rejoin everything and build a new spine for it. So
it's a good thing you got these skills.
Well, I'm still working on them. I'm always a student of conservation. The minute I think that I know everything, I need to quit. So and I talked. I was on the phone with Kenny on this book too. We'll get to that a little bit later on. So
we got some great comments from the chat.
If that were a real airplane, I would love to fly.
If it were not imaginary,
I would figure out how to get the engine started and fly it. Yes, I would.
Awesome. Welcome, Collecting Chaos. Glad to have you with us. Jason, so there's buyer's premium, and then there's an additional fee for the credit card. There's also a handling fee. Yeah. There's also a handling fee and a shipping fee. But I either do a wire transfer or electronic check, and then they do waive that credit card fee. So when you're buying bigger books, that saves you a couple bucks. Here's a good question. Robbie, why does CGC sometimes give a blue label if something's missing and other times a green label? Shouldn't there be one criteria? So it's a gated criteria, basically. So they assign the grade as if the thing is not missing first. And they say, okay, this is the grade. Imagine that thing is there. That's the qualified grade. Then they have a rubric. So if the chunk is missing, but the grade is above, I think it's 3.5. Do you want to check me on that, Phil? I think it's 3.5. So if the imaginary grade, imagining the thing is there, is above a 3.5, so 4 or higher, then they might give it a qualified grade. Well, they will give it a qualified grade. So imagine like a Hulk 181 with the Marvel value stamp missing. If the book is a 6 and the stamp is gone, they'll give it a qualified 6. If that same exact book is a 3.5 and the stamp is gone, they'll just give it a 3.5.
Yeah.
So it's universal 3.5. Now, there's one other little caveat here. As the submitter, you can always request that it not be in a qualified slab. So when you submit it, you say, listen, this is my Hulk 181. I think it's a 6, but I think it's qualified 6. The Marvel value stamp is missing. I do not want it in a qualified slab. Give me a universal slab. They will look at it and they will say, okay, it's a 6, but we're going to knock it down to a 4.5 because the Marvel value stamp takes out part of the story, and they will send it back to you in universal 4.5. So it is a consistent rule. It's just got gates and decision points in it. So it appears to be random, but in fact it isn't. There's a very specific way that they grade.
There is a method.
The qualified.
That's interesting about the Marvel value stamp, because I thought they used to do like a 0.5, but then they were like, we're being kind of harsh, like a 1.8 or a 2.0 at most. But I feel like I've only seen like a 2.0 universal for a book that was missing the Marvel value stamp.
I did estimate that number. I don't know the exact knockoff that they would do.
Gotcha. But there is a number.
Value stamp. I mean, to my point, this book here, Heritage thinks is a 2, and it's got a chunk missing larger than a Marvel value stamp.
Yeah, I mean, I remember submitting a Marvel mystery, I think a 46, like the Schomburg bridge explosion cover, and it would have been like a fine, and it came back a 4.0, and it was missing maybe just as much interior panel, so it wasn't just margin. It would have been like the swings to show that they would downgrade it, just kind of how you're talking about this.
Yeah. Something like 2 whole grades, I think, is about.
Yeah, I think that's about right.
Two whole grades is usually a max limit on that.
Yeah.
So not sure about the finer details of exactly how much they knock off, but I am confident about the general rubric of how they handle qualified versus universal. So hopefully that helps, Robbie. We ready for next slide?
We can go to the next slide. All right. So the tape removal used Bestine, and it went very well. Actually, it came off nice and clean. There was very minimal cleansing, which made my life a little bit easier of the adhesive. It did, like I said, it did weaken the spine, once we took everything loose. So when I was manipulating everything, it finally gave up the ghost. I knew I was going to have to
Did that happen in Bestine, Larry?
No, it happened in
water.
It happened in Larry's hands, is what it did.
Man.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I admit my mistakes. We've all had them, but it was okay. I knew I was going to have to fix it anyway. So
the reason I ask is because Bestine, for those of you that haven't used it, maybe it doesn't actually penetrate the paper the same way water does. So it doesn't swallow the paper, and it doesn't make the paper weak like water does.
No, it's great.
Wet paper that's actually wet with water will literally rip itself under its own weight. That doesn't tend to be the case with Bestine. So That's
Yeah.
why I asked.
And if you're not familiar with Bestine, it's also designed as basically a rubber cement adhesive remover,
Right.
and it was made for a totally different craft than what we're using it for.
Oh yeah.
But it works perfect.
Apparently not a finger moisturizer based on
No.
this picture on the left.
Yeah,
there.
Larry, I would recommend wearing gloves definitely if you're.
No.
Because for me, I always err on the side of caution, and that freaked me
it's
out when I saw my fingers like that.
it's a preservative, Come on. I need, but I think is I need to do a tactile feel. I can't feel with gloves on. So I need to run my finger across it and feel if there's any residue left on it, things like that. So
it's basically it's N-heptane, or it's actually, look, I'm not going to be on here recommending you put your fingers in it, but I also would not chastise.
I'm not gonna drink it. So.
I also would not chastise somebody for doing it.
So, hey, if a scientist says that it's okay, then
don't drink it.
Yeah, definitely don't drink it.
So now the bottom.
You said I could drink it. Hey.
I said you could drink the de-rusting solution, the sisal acid. I said you could drink. I did not say you could drink Bestine.
Now this bottom piece of tape, it was the adhesive residue had already soaked into the paper. This is the reason we want to remove tape. Tape just destroys paper. Yeah. And so when it came off, the little bit of the color came off, as you can see on the right photo. Couldn't be helped. It stayed with the tape. So
and that paper has been penetrated by the adhesive, after which the adhesive cross-links and crystallizes. It disrupts the paper matrix. That paper is weak, brittle, and not long for this world anyway. So the loss of it here is not a big loss. We're going to presumably repair this and strengthen that in a way that is superior to what was there anyway.
One would hope, yeah.
Yep.
So, okay, you can move on to the next photo. So, the elephant in the room.
Here's your chunk, yeah.
Yeah, it's a significant chunk.
Wait, can I just show something real quick? You know how how there's that lore about like people drinking bong water? I mean, hey, we go on that path. All right, who's gonna swig some of the yellowed Bestine that has been cleaning 4 or 5 wraps? Oh boy.
Anyway. Well, how about? Well, I was on a different angle here. I thought Jim had a keyword, and every time somebody said Bestine, he drank or something. I wasn't sure where he was there. Maybe we should have a word. Maybe we should have a word, and everybody drinks. Let's work on that. How about this art on the splash page of 1, though?
Yeah, pretty sweet. Love that.
That is sick.
Isn't that cool?
It really is. Man, that should be the cover of what if that was on the cover of this book? This would be a $10,000 book if that was on the cover.
Yeah, probably would, with the skull. You bet.
With the skull, with that helmet? Are you kidding me?
With the Nazis, and yeah, you bet.
Wow.
Yeah. Look at the bomber, in that bottom panel. It's got the skull on the side of the airplane.
That's awesome. Yeah, I see it.
So anyway, I got to this. When I bought the book, it was notated that there was some material missing when I got it from Heritage. I didn't realize it was going to look like this.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to it, and I went, "Oh man!"
Mm-hmm.
So I measured it out, and I think that you can see it in the next picture. But it was 2 inches across, 2 inches deep. Okay, this is after I cleaned it. So, first of all, I deacidified it, flattened it, and that's how I want to work with it. And I knew I was going to leaf cast it, which he did. We did it in the machine. It was a full submersion cast on this book, but I was concerned because the limits for CGC is 2 inches by 2 inches. 2 square inches, or basically 4 square inches, I should say. Now, I was concerned at how it was at. I consulted with Kenny, and ultimately I talked to Matt about it, and it was still falling in the conserve. But anything bigger than that and loss of dialogue greater than that, it would have not got the conserve label.
Right. So let's clarify that. So first, when he says Matt, he's talking about Matt Nelson, president of CGC. Yeah. When we're talking about leaf casting and the guidelines, this is 4 square inches that includes part of the book, part of the story. Now, you can essentially do
much more
I
unlimited. It's in the marginalia, and it's not.
I wasn't sure.
Yeah, and as long as it's not actually affecting the story. So that's another thing where if you read the CGC Grade to Guiding Comics, the Guide to Grading Comics, you'll read that and you'll say, well, wait a minute, it says 2 inches by 2 inches, but I've seen Jerry the Jitterbug put 16 square inches of leaf cast on a book easily on each page, right? And he still gets a conserved grade. Why is that? So Larry just explained.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Larry just explained it. You can do that amount of the actual section, the actual story, and still get a conserved grade. You can do as much as you want in the margins, in the gutters, that doesn't affect the story with and still get a conserved grade.
And also, Jason, just to clarify, this is what we were talking about earlier. So like, just as an example, I had a book that had two or 3 pages with this much missing from each page, and it would have been about a fine, and CGC graded it a VG of 4. So it got knocked down 2 full grade points instead of what would have been a 6 qualified. So there, but
and you're talking about a universal in both cases.
Correct. So, but there's also what we're discussing is the nuance of how it's like in that instance, in a remark, pieces missing from these 3 pages slightly affect story. So it's not incomplete. It slightly affects story. It's like once you start going over that threshold, though, and you start adding more and more, that's where they're like, yeah, we can't really give this a complete grade anymore. Too much is missing.
Right. And by the way, that's consistent going all the way back to Robert Overstreet. Go back and read your earliest copies of your Overstreet price guide and read the definition of VG, and you will read exactly that definition, up to 2 or 3 pages with a 2 by 2 inch or 1 page with a 4 by 4 inch chunk missing. And it's still considered VG by Robert Overstreet. So, as much as grading has shifted over time, there's some elements that have anchored it all these years. First Overstreet guide over 50 years ago now.
Good Lord, has it been 50 years?
1971, baby. 54 years ago.
Yeah, because I still remember my first Overstreet guide, and I think it was number 8 or number 9.
Yeah, my first was number 12. Yeah. Phil's first one was number 27.
He's such a
say like 30 something. Yeah.
31? No, you were in the game before that.
It would have been one. I mean, like my dad had one, and I think he gave me his old one when he got a new one or something. And I'm trying to think. It probably would have been 1998 or 1999.
I think this is a segment, guys.
I think I was a 9-year-old looking at Overstreet, being like, "Wow, all these Donald Duck books that are clearly all near mint are worth a fortune," And I was looking at like volume 9, issue whatever, being like, "This is issue 3 from the first volume." Just
I know. I found my Wizard number 1 with the McFarlane Spider-Man on the cover of it. Unfortunately, it was very well read. So anyway, we're getting off topic.
I don't have a Wizard one. I think I have a Wizard. Which one had Wolverine on the cover? Was it Wizard 2 or 3?
I don't know.
That was my first issue of Wizard.
Larry, tell us about this wings.
Come on.
We got off topic. Come on.
Okay,
so the picture on the left, obviously it hasn't been cleaned yet. It's just as I took it out. It's got the horizontal spine cracks, everything like that was still there. Now, for the kids at home, always clean, deacidify before you start doing any work. Get all the filth out, because you start messing around with things, and then you're going to have dirt and tide lines and all these other things. So I always clean. I always flatten everything out. That's how I go to work on it. So
Chaos. That's old school, man. Wow.
yeah, that is old school.
That's great.
So anyway, this is what it looked like. I didn't have any pictures of it in the immersion tank, unfortunately. I just have the after pictures, which we'll look at. But I do want to preface, to go to the next slide. I got to tell a little bit of story. So
are you saying go to the next slide or before you go?
No, go ahead and go to the next slide.
All right.
So this is what I want to talk about. So I was doing this, and I was actually on the telephone with Kenny Sanderson during this whole process. I'm not blaming Kenny. It's my fault. So anyway, I'm working the machine. It's one of the still early test runs on the machine, and I had a leak in the membrane, and I lost all of the pulp. And I was like, oh, crap. I got this fully wet, partially pulped, and it was just like I was stuck. So I ran inside. I had another a blender full of a different color pulp, and it was basically treated as like an emergency, and I had to substitute a different color pulp. Now, I know that at least for right now, CGC does not grade the color of the pulp. They're grading texture, and basically they close your eyes and you run your fingers across and see if you can feel any seams or anything like that. And that's literally how they graded it. So anyway, I wasn't happy with the color, but I went with it anyway. I was committed at this point. Now, that's we can go to the next picture. So you can see the measurements on the side, but that is the color of the pulp. Now, when I ran my finger across it, I did my own test on it. It came out beautifully, actually.
Yeah.
You could not tell any texture at all. Your finger just went smoothly right across it. I didn't like the look of it, but looks aren't everything, as they say. Yeah. And so I went ahead and went with this. And the book was graded, and when books get graded at CGC, just a lot of everybody knows this. It gets graded by 3 people, and that's just to show a consistency. Everybody's got their own opinion; they take their own notes. In speaking with Matt Nelson, Matt was one of the graders. He told me, he says, "Oh yeah, I remember that coming through my hands." He didn't know it was mine, of course, but he does remember the book. So I know Matt actually looked at it himself. So
I think it's beautiful. I wouldn't be concerned with this color at all. To the point that we made the last time we met, which is I'm not really trying to hide my conservation. So
no,
a functional repair
exactly
is a beautiful repair. I do want to know, it looks like you have some loss of ink around the leaf cast. What's going on there?
Well, to get a finish on it that I liked in the blend, I actually did use some very, very high grit sandpaper to smooth the edges. And when you do that, you're going to lose a little bit of the paper. And when I say high grit, 5,000 grit.
5,000, yeah.
That's
that's enough to abrade paper, though.
Yeah, well, I have all the way up to 7,000 grit sandpaper to do that. I got it specifically for this, so you could basically not destroy the fibers and things like that. It comes out very smooth. Mm-hmm. But yes, I did have some color loss here, but it didn't affect anything.
I want to address Rick. I'm not sure. Rick says, pulled out my Overstreet 1 first print, copyrighted 1970. I'm not sure if you are saying this to point out that I said 71, so I'll just clarify. When you buy a 1926 calendar, it's published in September of 1925. And when you buy a 1971 price guide, they publish it, toward the end of 1970. So when I say 1971 is the first year of Overstreet, it's the 1971 price guide. It's actually published, as you point out, late in 1970. So thanks for the clarification. But I think we all use the shorthand, like we call it the year that they have on it, not the year that it was published, in the same way that you call a 1925 calendar a 19, like that's technically published in 24, but it would be silly to call it a 1924 calendar, right? All right.
Sounds
so good. It goes back together beautifully.
Yeah, we squared it up
because
the spine was corrected. There was some, you can see the dark spots on the back of the cover in the front. It's a staining. I did give it another cleaning before I submitted the book, and you'll see the results here in a minute. It came out nicely.
It looks really good overall, and even the little bit of color loss you had at the bottom, it looks just like natural wear. It doesn't even really look like tape was on this before, which is what you would.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's I want to get rid of it, and that open space at the bottom, that the spine was entirely leaf cast. So
I wanted to ask about that.
Yeah,
so you reinforced the whole spine with newly cast leaf.
Correct.
Okay. And you had a little bit of infill, and you had a full split, so.
Yeah.
Did you incorporate any Japanese paper into that, or just pulp?
I think I did incorporate some Japanese paper after I did it, just to give it a little bit of extra strength.
Yeah, that's understandable.
Yeah, because I think I casted it, and then I put some Japanese paper down on top.
I mean, it's going to be conserved anyway, so
yeah, that's the way I look at it. It's going to be conserved.
Exactly. There's no issue.
What they look for is there any lifting of the cast or anything like that? And I've had that with some other books, and it is a learning process as we go with leaf casting. So
I'm doing combination of I'm only casting actual missing material. If it's just torn, I'm mending that with Japanese paper. But I will say that it's an awful lot of work. You have to do it serially in steps, and I'm not sure that it's a better way to do it. It's just how I've been doing it so far.
The casting process is very rapid. The setup takes a horrendous amount of time.
Well, the way I'm doing it now, actually, I can do both of them quite quickly.
Yeah, you're doing it on the vacuum table.
On a vacuum table.
Yeah.
But for me then to come back, and I'm not, maybe I should touch wood when I do this, but I'm not having any lift up issues. Just subtle differences in what we're doing or composition of the pulp, whatever. I'm not having to do sandpaper or anything. So, but that said, because I'm not wanting to do infill over just like a crack, essentially where there's a tear, but I have all the material still there, I'm wanting to repair that with Japanese paper. When I come back over to do Japanese paper, I'm tending to have to seal the whole book, because otherwise I get color shift with the Japanese paper and the wheat paste. Yeah. So that then means the whole book's got to be re-wet and re-dried, which that process is a pain. So, I may shift my approach on that in the future, but that's how I've been doing it so far. And I'll share I hope to share some results on my channel soon, showing that, guys and gals, for those of you that want to see it.
Yeah, on this book I did the full immersion, submersion cast, and then it goes under high pressure, crush it basically.
Now you did the full immersion even for this cover, and how well does the pulp get pulled to that crack?
Terribly.
Right.
And that is because
there's no pressure drop there, because there's no missing material.
Yeah, well, the other thing was I was using 100% Abaca, and I'm still experimenting, and I think that's a horrible choice for me. Abaca is got such a long fiber It does
I have not had good. Personally, I have not had good results with pure Abaca, so that
No.
doesn't surprise me.
You
I haven't been
basically,
able to get it to
yeah,
work.
you have. I'm gradually going. I went to 50% Abaca. Now I'm even using less, like maybe 20% Abaca.
Sure.
The rest of it's something else.
Yeah.
And what you want to get is that super fine, and you can't do it with Abaca.
Sure.
You
Yeah.
just can't. It's strong,
Hmm.
but
Perhaps it was too moist, Larry.
yeah,
Thanks,
Throw a
sales
couple-
boy. We appreciate you.
Throwing a couple singles at you.
Well, I think it looks stunning. And
job.
another reason why you cast on the inside is if you do have any issues, you don't see them out here. If you do have to do some sandpaper scuffing, you don't see it out here. And this is where 80% of the grade of the book is. So bravo.
Agreed.
Very
Larry,
well done.
Larry,
Yeah.
you washed, deacidified, and cast the first wrap and the cover.
correct.
Did you wash and deacidify the rest of the interior too, or just
Absolutely.
just
If you're going to deacidify a book and you keep it forever, you do the whole thing. Plus, you also want your pages to match. Because if I didn't do the rest of the book, that first drop wouldn't have matched the interior. It would have been red
Yeah.
flag. So I deacidify the whole thing, and once it all goes back, it looks good. It really does.
Larry's
So-
a stickler on that, and I'll admit that I've cut some corners on that before. Like if I have on occasion, I'll wash a certain number of wraps, like wraps that need to be mended with Japanese paper anyway. And then I'll lay them down next to the rest of the book. And if I can't tell the difference in terms of page quality, in terms of color, tone, all that sort of stuff, I've put books back together that way. Part of the rationale for doing that is that I do leave a alkaline reserve in the pages that I did treat. And there's really good evidence in the literature that that alkaline reserve can travel through the book, through the rest of the pages, right?
That's how I look at it.
Yeah, so I don't feel bad about not doing it. I'm not as strident about it as Larry is here, but I do salute you for the sticking to the really strictly best practices on this, Larry.
That's the thing. And you just said the key words: best practices.
Absolutely.
Don't cut corners. Don't try to do things. If you're going to do it right.
Yeah.
And so you do the whole book.
So do we want to do guesses?
Yeah.
Is the
let's see.
reveal next? What do we have?
I think
next?
the reveal is next. So
Okay.
you can everybody can
all right,
start
folks.
guessing at any value.
Yeah. All right, folks. What do you think the grade is here? If you think I'm presuming this is conserved. He said he spoke to Matt about it before he proceeded. I don't think we have to say, is it
I'll
universal?
give that away. Yes, it is conserved.
Yeah. I don't think we have to say, is it universal? Is it, qualified? Is it restored? Is it? So this is a conserved book. Captain Larry submitted it to CGC. He's got the grade back in hand. So take your guesses at what you think this received from the grading gurus at CGC, one of which was apparently Matt, one of the 3 graders on this book. Let's see, we got 4.5, 4.5, 4.5, 4.0. Let's think about it. So I'm gonna try to intuit through it while folks are guessing. From the outside, I think this presents like a 5, maybe like a 5. That's what I feel like. If I'm then imagining the defects on the interior, I think you're getting full credit for the infill. I don't think any of that counts against you any further.
Yep.
I don't think this looks like a 5.5, but I think it looks better than a 4.5. Now, if it was a 5, as I'm saying, it looks like a 5. If I was if CGC were decrementing for the infill or the split spine or any of those other things, then it would have to come down from there. But I'm presuming you got the professional conserved nod here. So I think it stays there. Though I don't think 4.5 is a bad guess. But I say it's a 5.
Okay, so let's take a look at our comments. I see a lot of 4.5s in there. 4, 5, 4, 3.5.
Yeah, Rick's at 4.5. Jason's at 4.5. Don's at 4.5. AG's 4.0. He's conservative. Salesboy's at 5.0. He's liberal. The professor's at 4.0. Collecting chaos. That's a harsh 3.5, my friend. John says 5.5. I think that's, again, for me, it's a little generous. Come on, Professor. Give me a 4.6. That would be
Larry,
nice.
Larry, I want to buy this book from you. I don't care what CGC says. I think it's like a 2.5, and I think I'm being pretty nice with that.
Do you have a guess, Phil? You haven't seen the grade, right?
Oh, I mean, Paul, your breakdown was, as you were going through, you see that meme where it's like the numbers going through all the things were going. And I was like, you're doing the same thing I'm doing. I'm like, yeah, it's settled right at 5 was what because I imagined a 5.5 if that little bit of art wasn't missing. It is, and so a 5. I think a 4.5 is too nice. I mean, not fair. I think it's a little nicer than a 4.5, but I could see them hitting it at 4.5 too for the accumulation. There's no major missing pieces. It just has too much overall eye appeal. It's a golden age book. It gets that little golden. There is a golden age bump, everyone, too. If you aren't aware, if you see a Silver Age Spider-Man book or a Wings comic like this like in like the same what appears to be the same grade, don't be surprised if you see this book get like a 0.5 or a 1.0 grade higher, because they give a little more leniency to these books than the Silver Age ones.
And I do think this book, to be fair to our guessers here, I do think this book it's between a 4.5 would not be crazy. If I submitted this and I got a 4.5, I wouldn't be throwing a fit. I would be saying, seems a little harsh, and I would move on. Right now, 4 I do think is too harsh, and like I said, I think it's not quite nice enough for a 5.5. But
now I will tell you from these pictures you're looking at, I did clean it one more time.
Okay.
Oh.
Are we ready for the reveal?
I think we are. I think everybody's got their guesses in.
Let's do it. Hey, look how beautiful that looks.
That's awesome.
Congratulations, Larry.
Thank you. Yeah, I gave it, like I said, I did give it one more cleaning, and I was happy with it. So yeah, I got.
When you say clean, do you mean dry clean or what?
Yeah, I dry cleaned the cover.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So.
What are the notes on this?
Yeah, Larry, read us the notes.
Conservation.
I think I put it in a slide.
Oh, do we have it? So I'm wasting
so.
time here. Okay, let's move on then.
There's the back cover. So the back cover cleaned up quite a bit.
Oh yeah,
it did. Yeah. Okay.
So, and then I think we have.
I could actually see this at 5.5 with those stains on that. I presume, unless it's hidden by the glare, that stain on the spine gone. Yeah.
It cleaned up quite a bit.
Yeah. Wow. So let's go. Yeah. Next slide. You should have the grader. There we go.
There you go.
There we go. All right. 5.0. Off-white to white pages. Beautiful page quality. Graded just not too long ago. Conserve. Cover clean. Conservation includes leaf casting to page 32. Cover. First wrap and centerfold reinforced. That's the Japanese paper on the first wrap and centerfold. So they mention that as reinforced, whereas they mention the other as leaf casted. So just for those of you trying to look at the subtleties of the label text and the CGC notes, that's what they're referring to there. Greater notes include small multiple tears to the cover, light multiple crease to the cover, heavy spine stress lines on the spine, and tape stained center of spine. Still, come on, beautiful.
Yep.
Thank you.
Key comments: Skull Squad, Phantom Falcons, Parachute Patrol, and Suicide Smith begin. Gray tone cover. Is that the first appearance of 1, 2, 3, 4 story arcs?
I don't know. I would say so, yes, because being this is the first book, and this is where they introduced their aviation theme. So I would say,
Wow.
yeah, those are probably all firsts.
First Skull Squad, baby. That should be all caps.
Suicide Smith.
Very nice. What else do we have here, Larry? You got a couple more slides.
I
Let's
got
see
a
what
couple
else
more
we got.
slides, I think. So,
yeah.
what's it worth?
Always a great question.
So we paid $312 for it.
Real quick, Larry, the
Yeah.
centerfold wasn't leaf cast. You only leaf cast the
No.
cover in the first wrap, right? So that would have
Correct.
been traditional. Okay,
So
just
let's
to clarify,
That is-
Jason,
that is-
that
that
wasn't
is
comma.
Correct.
So the comma
Centerfold was
indicates.
reinforced.
Yeah, so the comma. So conservation includes colon, leaf casting to page 32 and the cover. Then comma, first wrap and centerfold were reinforced. That's how I read that, Jason.
Yeah. So what was done with the centerfold is I put Japanese paper with wheat paste on the back side of that centerfold to strengthen the staple holes. So it's just over that little stretch of staple hole because if I recall, the bottom staple on the center wrap was blown out. So I refolded the paper and reinforced it, and that's what that was. So because when you want to put the staple through and pull everything back together, you don't want it to blow out again.
exactly.
Before we talk about equity, let's just do a few kudos. So kudos to
Yeah.
Salesboy who won the guessing game.
Yes, he did.
And then a bunch of kudos for you, Captain. AG says, excellent. Salesboy has
Thank
star
you.
eyes. Friend of the show, Kat, says, awesome. Archivist, we just covered. Robbie Joseph says, hip, hip, hooray. And now let's go equity.
Okay, so it really, I like the book. I'll have it in my hands tomorrow, so I'm looking forward to seeing that. So
I'm like is not strong enough. This book is awesome, dude.
I think it came out great. I'm
Yeah.
I'm really pleased with it. Yeah, I can't. It's just from looking at the very first photos to what it looks like now. I think it came out very, very nice.
Yeah. Now I don't know the market on this book.
So luckily I looked it up. So this is a Universal 2.0, which is what Heritage graded it at.
Mhm.
There was the one right here that sold at $343. So it I figured that was fair. That's what it sold for.
Mhm.
So I went from
Paid just
from
slightly
there.
less than that for a raw.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
I'd say so. Yeah.
Mhm. Okay.
So you throw in the cost of the grading and things like that. Then
So
probably
you're
about
basically at this cost, yeah.
Yeah, I'm at the cost. So then I think the next slide I went to a Universal 5.0. Wasn't much reference there at all. 2023, $750.
Mm.
So using our conserved percentages and things like that, I came out with 375 on the bottom end to 562 on the top end.
Mhm.
So was there equity created? Little bit, I think. So
How many total in the census for this book, Larry?
I didn't look that up. I can do that quickly.
I can do it.
I would say
You
that
can do it.
it's.
All right.
Yeah, I got it.
I say while it's a little bit of equity created, that especially in terms of like the 5-year short-term hold, a book like this probably has more potential to increase in value versus something that's more plentiful in the census. Like if you were to do this work on like a 60s book or something, because 5 years from now, people are still collecting issues from this title. Issue ones are going to be the most desirable, or
I
one
agree.
desirable issue. So when you start to look at it like that, it's like I think that it only kind of compound over time. So while in the short term, maybe not a lot of equity was made, in the long term, and then you start to see the prices of this start to go up a bit.
58 total in the census.
Okay.
There is 198 that's sold in 2018 for $29,000.
Wow. A 9.8. You don't hear about golden age 9.8s very often.
No.
Probably a pedigree copy.
I mean, this is a good guess. Yeah.
File copy. Yeah,
I have
probably.
a couple of 9.6s in All Star.
Yeah.
Let me actually. I'm interested to see now.
Phil, don't drop anything.
Yeah, it's the church copy.
I was going to guess it maybe. I don't think the Promise collection was out quite at that time, so it was either the San Francisco or the church copy.
Yes, the church copy. Very nice.
Yeah. No. So I don't know. It's hard to say. This one's going to go in my personal collection, so you won't.
Sweet book, Larry. You should be proud of yourself. That's a great and sweet work on a sweet book.
I wouldn't.
Yeah, I thought it was
I wouldn't let this book go for anything less than 600 personally.
Yeah.
So I think there's definitely some equity created there, and more importantly, a treasured book saved and preserved, and that's really why we do it.
Yeah.
Though it is nice to get a little bump in equity.
Now, I'm going to add why we've been talking and discussing this book. The YouTube episode for this book premiered 5 minutes ago. So if anybody, once you're done watching the show, or our show, go to my channel and you can watch the whole process. It's all in one video. So that's the one. So
there it is. There's your thumbnail.
That's my thumbnail. So if you guys want to see it after we wrap up our show,
your mind will be blown. Yeah. We've already blown your mind.
But you can see the process.
Yeah.
But a lot of the pictures we saw today were actually screen grabs. So
awesome. Well, appreciate you sharing that, Larry. That's really a great outcome, and what a great book.
I'm happy with it. Yeah, I think it came out great.
I don't have any issues of this book in my collection of Wings, but I was just looking at some of the other covers when I was looking up the.
There's some cool covers out there.
There's some great covers. What a cool title.
Yeah, I've got one. They started switching out to the Good Girl covers.
I think I've seen some of those. Yeah.
I've got a 92 or a 93. They've got this guy spread eagle attached to an airplane propeller, and there's a woman in a mini skirt parachuting down with a machine gun and
Wings
to rescue the guy. So
Wings. Yeah, that's where it's at.
I think there's some actually Matt Baker books in the Wings collection too. I'm not sure which ones.
That would make sense, right?
Yeah, because same
covers at the very least.
Yeah. Same group of comics. So I'm sure he touched a few of them.
Hey, here you go. As one of the three people here who never says, because we're pretty humble guys. We're never like, hey guys, come on, not really like we're here just to talk about stuff. But hey, if you like us, give us a thumb up.
Give us a thumbs up. Yeah. We appreciate the thumbs up.
And you really still want to voice your opinion, give us a thumbs down, and then you can feel at peace.
There's no such thing as bad publicity. In all seriousness, though, it does help the algorithm get pushed out to a few more people, and then it just grows the chat and makes it more fun for all of us. So appreciate you bringing that up, Mike, and appreciate everybody who showed up tonight, brought their A game with questions and comments, and Jason did not make me laugh out loud tonight, but most nights he does. And I think we should wrap there, guys. We're going just about an hour and 15 minutes, which I think is a good length for the show. Too much longer, and I start to get, it's close to my bedtime. Thank you so much for joining me, guys. Thank you, Larry, for that segment. That was a lot of fun, and I learned a lot. And appreciate everybody in the chat. Let's say thanks one more time to those that brought you this episode, and that is Collecting Chaos and Salesboy Comics. And then thanks so much for next episode sponsors, AG, Don Carter, and Salesboy Comics again. I am not going to change the sign-off hashtag to keep it moist, though, just so you know, Salesboy. It doesn't matter how much you super chat us.
One kind of thing. Yeah.
It doesn't matter how much you super chat us. It's not going to become keep it moist. That said, I will say. That said, I will say. Until next time, take care of one another.
See you, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in. Now.